learn how our schema design affects application generation. Then we'll talk about, very briefly, about what is a CRM application, and then we'll get right into building the application live with IronSpeed. Remember to get your questions in. I expect that we'll have a few at the end of this, so I'm leaving time for some questions. To get the most out of IronSpeed Designer, you need to prepare your database first. Actually, the database is the core, the brains of your operation. It tells you what it is you're thinking about, what's available. It models your world. And so your database schema should really reflect what you need to get done. IronSpeed Designer uses your database schema to create your pages. And the page layout, the functionality, and the performance depend on your schema. So a well-designed schema is easily extendable and allows you to add more to your database and your application as you go along. Remember, very few applications are built right the way they end up from the very start. There's always room for improvement and additional thoughts, and so remember to leave room for expanding your schema and your database. That being said, to use IronSpeed Designer is why we try to make this rapid application development. We don't have to know all about the technology to build web applications. We don't have to know about ASPX or other .NET concepts. You need a good understanding of your database and then apply IronSpeed Designer in order to build it. A well-designed database starts with, of course, child tables that define your one-to-many relationships. You'll have separate lookup tables so that items you'll be looking up. Here's an example of shippers for your orders that allow you to extend. You'll have indexing throughout your database so that the items in your tables can be looked up quickly and efficiently. If you don't have indexing on fields that are going to be looked up, then you'll find that your database will bog down and you'll suffer the biggest performance problem. As data gets larger, it gets slower and slower to look things up. Since IronSpeed Designer builds its application straight from your database, it's important to use meaningful names. IronSpeed Designer uses the names to create labels and fields on your pages. You can use camel case, so IronSpeed Designer can parse the names, split them into separate words. You should use consistent singular and plural so that your database or your application uses it consistently. It's also important for the field types in your database to represent the type of data you're trying to represent. You should watch the length of your fields, make sure they're appropriate, either long or short as needed. And for instance, you have an image you want to show, then try to use an image type if one is available rather than just binary. Same thing for money. If you're using money in a field, then try to use a currency type. And as you go along, you'll want to present your data, your tables that are the core of your data. You'll want to present them in different views. You want to tie tables together. And to do that, you certainly can. And to do that, you should use the database itself to create those views rather than just trying to drop separate related tables on a single page in IronSpeed Designer. The use of views is an excellent way to look at your data differently and present different views to your users. You want to make sure that it's the database doing the work that belongs to the database and IronSpeed Designer doing the work that belongs to the presentation. Remember, IronSpeed Designer is not a query construction tool. It's a page construction tool. Of course, you'll want primary keys in all your tables in the database. Primary keys allow us to look up individual records. If for some reason you don't have a primary key, or you have a view and you want to give it a primary key, it's got some fields that would function as a primary key, then you can use the virtual primary key wizard in IronSpeed Designer. Likewise, for foreign keys tie your data together, relate one table to another, and you should have those all declared before you start building your IronSpeed Designer application. Remember, IronSpeed Designer builds your application based on what it knows. And so if you're missing a foreign key and for some reason you can't declare it in your database, then use the virtual foreign key wizard in IronSpeed Designer to declare the foreign key so that IronSpeed Designer knows about it. The virtual foreign key wizard gives you the ability to specify which tables and fields are related to which other tables and fields, and then thereafter, IronSpeed Designer will use that in its application, but no changes will be made to your database, and others won't be affected. Now let's talk a little bit about what a CRM application is. CRM stands for Customer Relationship Management. It manages all your interactions with your customers. As you can imagine, that's multifaceted. It involves sales, technical support, marketing, customer support. Anything having to do with your customers and your business can probably be thought of in the terms of customer relationship management. For sales management, we manage orders and invoices, but we create workflow to process new customers. We manage products and services and get statistics and reports. That's a general theme. Statistics and reports apply basically to all of the data that you're collecting, and that's one of the reasons for using the database and an application development tool like IronSpeed Designer to be able to get the reports out as you need them. You can manage technical support cases in your technical support area. You can use it for your marketing in your marketing area, manage campaigns, manage emails, and you can use it for customer support in their accounts, in their interactions with the company staff. Of course, with all this tied together in a database, you have tremendous advantages of better decision making. Hopefully you'll get better revenue out of it. If you're not, then you're not really using your information effectively. But this gives you the opportunity to do that, and you get better customer relations, better customer support. With IronSpeed Designer, building a CRM application, of course, like any other, it's iterative and will take time to refine it, but it's tremendously easy to get started, which we're going to show today. You select the tables and requires from your database. Remember, we've already developed the database. We've figured out what we want to know about. Now we need to figure out how to present it, and IronSpeed Designer will do that. IronSpeed Designer creates your functionality. You add security in Designer, and you've got the start of a really good CRM application. Of course, as with any living application, you'll be tweaking it constantly and adding things to it, but IronSpeed Designer gives you the ability to do that in a rapid turnaround environment. Once you do with IronSpeed Designer, our general design philosophy is to, if you ask to build something, we build as much as possible based on what we see in the database. And so one of the primary tasks you're going to be faced with in tweaking your application is deciding what you want to leave out. There'll be a lot of things there, and you won't need all of them for your application. So because it's much easier to delete something from a set of pages than to decide that you need it and decide where to put it. And of course, you'll be wanting to add formulas, charts, especially where data is chartable, and we have an excellent charting facility. So now let's actually get started in building our CRM. We're going to open up IronSpeed Designer we have installed here, and I hope you have it installed too. Remember, you can download it and get it going right away. And with IronSpeed Designer, of course, it has to have administrative permissions on the local machine. Let me put aside my webinar control here so that it's not in the way. And just before we actually look at IronSpeed Designer and get building our application, I wanted to take you for just a minute to our database that we'll be using today. All of these are the database and the application I built yesterday, just like this one, will be available for you on our website in the links you'll get at the end of this webinar. Let's go to my local machine. Whoops, wrong one. We don't want server authentication. Normally you'd use SQL server authentication for a live database, because when you put it on your web server, you'll want to have SQL authentication. But we'll use Windows authentication today, so I don't have to worry about it. We're doing it locally on this machine. And I'm not going to deploy this application. So if you want to see deployment, you can come to our crash course webinar. We'll see the databases, and here we have CRM 2014. So in the CRM 2014, we have a large set of tables. Many are supporting tables. We're going to take a core of these tables, which is here in a diagram. I've put together the core diagram of what it is you can use for your CRM application. We have employees, the company, we have cases, we have campaigns for marketing, we have the customers who are interacting with who belong to the companies, we have transactions, products for the orders, and workflow items, and this is what we'll be focusing on today. We'll put up the rest of the application and then talk about workflow. And we have a knowledge base that we can use. All of these can be built and expanded out. We won't get to expand out any of them today in just an hour, but you'll get the idea, and we'll get the core application going. Okay, with that available and our IronSpeed Designer running here, let's start our application. Go past the start screen. I'm going to be using a Cabernet theme, I believe, today. Let's see. I like Cabernet. So that'll give us a vertical menu. Many of the themes also have horizontal menus. It depends on what you want, but I want to leave some flexibility for menu size. So we'll start with that. We're going to be building from my own local SQL server. And if we let it find some SQL servers here in our database selection, we can go to local, use my Windows authentication, look at our databases, and look at the CRM database. Here we have, we're going to be using the account company. We're going to be using campaigns. These are the core tables that I showed you earlier. Now, with each of these that I didn't show you, and the best thing to do is when you select your first table, is select which pages you're going to be creating. Our core application will contain an add record page, an edit record page, a basic table page. Actually, I don't want a basic table page, so let me unselect these, go back to my account company. I'm going to change the basic table page, make it a group by page for most of the application, and also a record page. We're also going to be adding mobile pages for both mobile records and mobile tables so that people with mobile devices will have an easy time looking at our data. They won't be able to change it, but they will be able to look at it. And then we'll go ahead and add, now that we've got the core group of pages we want, we'll add the campaigns, the cases, and what else do we have here? Cases, customers, employees. Where's my customers? Customers, employees. Knowledge base. and the rest of the application, which will be orders and products and transactions, and then the workflow items. But workflow is in just a little while. First, we'll build out the core of the application. Without workflow, we'll add workflow to it. Go next. The other important point we have here is we'll be needing to add some virtual keys, because with this database, one of the key features of it is that we can do accountability. We can do tracing of who uses it. Let me show you here. You'll find pages, you can barely see them here, but there are 4 fields in many of the tables, most of the tables where we want them. They're called created by, created on, updated by, and updated on. Those fields allow us to do audit of the database, to collect information as it's used, and then to audit it. But to do that, we need those specified as foreign keys to the employees table, which is going to be kept, the information is going to be kept for. So let's do that. Since I don't have them all declared as foreign keys, to do that would give me a diagram which is so messy I couldn't follow it. So the first thing you want to do is add your virtual foreign keys for your audit. Let's look at the local database and go to the start with our account company table. I'm just going to do one table for this demo, but you get the idea, and you can add all of them that are needed. And the account company created by is going to want to be a foreign key field to the employees and its primary key, the representative ID. And so now when we want to record who's using the company, who created a particular record, we can see in the created by field. That'll add that, and we also want to add one for updated. So we'll go to the account company, and we'll look at updated by. Updated by wants to relate to the employee's representative ID. And now we could do the same thing for each of the others. I'll do just one as a representative, each of the other main tables that we're doing, so that when we use those items, when we add records or edit records, we'll be able to record who's doing it. And actually, to do that, well, since we're using those fields, we want to change in our application generation options. Let me expand it a little here. You want to make sure that you don't have IronSpeed Designer using those fields on each of the tables, each of the pages that they occur on, because you don't want to see them most of the time. You can add them later on, but what we want to do is exclude those from the fields that IronSpeed Designer will consider for adding to your pages. So you add them into the fields to exclude in your application generation options. And we'll save that, and let's go next. I won't worry about localizing it today. Now, where is our application? We're going to create My App 1, the classic My App 1, in my CRM training folder. We're going to create it as a web application, and we're going to create it in Visual Basic using the 3.5 framework, which is what I want to use to edit it in Visual Studio and run on my own personal web server if I had one here. And we're going to use Visual Studio 2008, and that's about all we need. We can finish our application. Well, we'll go next, see that we're creating all the pages I think I'm creating, and now let IronSpeed Designer go ahead and create them. So it will create all of the pages we've asked for. This will be the core of our application. All the other general items except for the workflow. While that's creating, let's take a look at our slides here, because we excluded all the fields which were initialized automatically. That's the audit fields. Now we're going to add a logo to our application. We're going to clean up our menus. We're going to look at adding security. And once we do that, we'll be able to also add the workflow. That's the next slide. Okay. Let's go back to our application. We've got our application ready. And we want to add a header to it because no application is good with just a generalized dummy logo. So where's my header? Here's my header control. In the header control, I'll look for the logo. I see I need a new image. Well, I just happen to have one here on my computer. I have a copy of our corporate database. And so I can go to its images folder, and I'm sure I'll find something useful in there, like an Iron Speed logo. So let's just copy this. Then we'll go, well, let's open up another window here. Go to our training manual folder here and go to our CRM in 11.1. In My App 1, this is the application we're working on right now. It goes to in our images folder, and we'll just paste in my image. Where is my paste? There it is. So now I have a logo I can use, and all I need to do is copy the file name, take that file name, put it over here, and now we've got a real logo for our application. We've got the logo. We'll look at the menus. Let's actually run the application just to make sure it runs. And we'll have it pretty much the way I want it right now, except in the CRM, in this version of the CRM application. Now, one of the things to realize with CRM, you may have several different applications working on the same database. You can partition them into different applications. In particular, you might have a customer-facing application also, which will use the same database, but we'll look at it from the customer's point of view, and we'll give customer logins and customer security rather than your own employees. That's the webinar for another time. There's my application. I know it's going to start. Here we go. And we have our employees. And so with our employees, and so I think we can use Bill Gates today. Let's go. Everything's fine here, except I'd like to really focus on my employees, so we'll go up to our employees folder in our application. We'll make the group by employees the start page, and we'll go to the menus and make sure that the menus start with our employees. Now, we want to have security for this, but first, before we add security, we want to now talk about workflow. So let's skip the security for right now until we get the workflow added, because we're going to be adding pages for workflow steps and workflow actions. We have the schema already prepared to allow us to keep track of emails to customers, a series of emails that constitute the workflow. So we're going to be adding the pages for it, and then we'll add security and update the security on the application. Then we're going to already initialize the actions table, and then configure our email server, and we'll have an operating workflow at the end of that. Let's take a look at back at our application. First thing we want to do is go to our application wizard, back to our pages step, because what we haven't added yet to our application is our workflow. Here we have the workflow process items. This is the heart of the sending the workflow emails to different people. And so we'll, instead of using a group by page, I wanted to use a basic page for the tables for the workflow. Then we'll use actions and steps, so we'll include the auxiliary field so we can define new steps, define new actions. And with that, we'll get our new pages. Let's finish the application. So we now added workflow. The workflow table gives us, of course, some menus to clean up. We've added pages here. Let's configure our menu again. We've got workflow at the bottom, but I want to have the process items first because it's the primary table we're worried about. These are used for auxiliary steps. And with that, now our application is needing security. So we'll go to the security wizard because we want to make sure that you're an employee logged in. And to do that, we'll go, let me go back and just mention here, we have roles tables. We could use database roles, but I'm not going to include role-based security today. I'm just going to use simple login security. It makes it easier for demonstration, but you really want to use the role-based security for your real live database. In the security, we're going to be using the employees table, and the employees table for the username will, this is a demo, remember, so I'm going to use the first name. This is going to make it easy for me to remember how to log in and use it. Then we're also going to include the email field so that our employees can be emailed their security information when they forget it. And now we'll secure some pages. Well, what we want to secure here is, of course, the employee pages so that when we come to our starting page, in reality, I probably want to secure them all, but then I have to log in every time I want to preview a page during development, and that's a little more than I need. So let's just demonstrate here the employees being secured, and also the workflow pages. Let's make sure that we have process items, we have workflow actions. Where are we? Show here, workflow. So we want to make sure that all the workflow actions table, the process items table, and the steps table are also secured. Now you notice none of these have changed yet because I haven't selected which security, signed in users, and now I'll set all the ones that I selected and add the security to your application. So now we have the workflow tables, but we don't have really the infrastructure, not infrastructure. We don't have the actual mechanics to do it, and that's going to be our next step. We'll just run it again. And when we do that, let's go to why has my web server stopped running? Let's just close it and see what's going on here. That's a strange thing. Let's kill this, we'll kill that. Go back to our application, build it. It's already built, should be already built, and run it. There we go. And so now we should get a running application, our web server, this ASP.NET development server that comes with IronSpeed Designer and Visual Studio is an excellent tool for developing local web applications, and it's working fine. So we'll log in. And since we're just using first names, it's easy to remember. And so now we're looking at our employees table. And so we have employees. We also have workflow process items, which when we look at them, we don't have any way to go process the items. There are items waiting to be done. I've added some data, but we don't have them. And so now let's go to our workflow. You'll notice, whoops, let me go back to the previous slide. One of the things we want to do is, since we're using email, we have to configure our email server. So why don't I do that right now before I go ahead and use the workflow. Let's go to our tools, configure our email server. We're going to be using post.ironspeed.com, our local Exchange server. And with that, we're going to use my email address for test. And we'll use local Windows authentication since I can log into it. Send me a test email, make sure I get it. And the server's working, so let's go back to our slides and talk about workflow. Well, to create workflow, we're going to do, first we have to add a button to our to process the workflow, and with that we'll have to, we want to override what's generated as default to add our own button processing for the workflow. And here's an example. We'll go through it in a minute. Then we're going to do the same thing to add the override email code. When we add the button and configure the button, then we're going to override the email code to actually process the emails, and we have some code here. And with that, we'll be able to send emails for our workflow. Okay, let's go back to our workflow process items. We're in the workflow process. Here, close these guys up. We don't need them. We're going to use the show items table. Show items table, let's just preview it, but I don't want to preview it since I've got it secured, has a two buttons in it already. It has the edit row and the delete row, and we're going to add another one here. So let's go just take a look at our toolbox. In our toolbox, we can go to our ASPX and other controls to get a theme button, a button that will match the theme of our application. Drop that in here. The first thing I want to do is give it some kind of meaningful name. So let's call it process button. That's what I did the last time and what the code reflects, so that'll make it sure that the code can refer to it. So now we have a button. The button has only a simple action on it. The simple action is to redirect. We don't want to redirect. We want it just to stay on this page. So let's just refresh the page. So when we actually perform our actions underneath, it will refresh the page and show you new data and to stay on the current page. Now we're going to add another action. We're going to add an email action. Adding the email action. For right now, since I'm going to override the code that's going to be generated here, I'm just going to put in a@b.com for a dummy email address. Since remember, as I said, I'm going to be overriding this code to have it get these values from the right place. And so we'll give it a simple set of values here, test workflow, because this will be overridden. And we'll finish our email application, our email sending ability. So now we have a button that will send email. It will send email when we press it, once we finish the configuration. All we need to do is edit the code. So let's go look at Visual Studio. Here we're opening the application in Visual Studio. We have the table control row that the button lives on. Actually, let's just, I'm going to close Visual Studio here and show you how to find these things easily. We want to customize this button, right? Oh, first of all, we need to build it. So let's build it to make sure that the code behind that reflects all those things is there. Now, with that, IronSpeed Designer says if we're selecting the button, we could, we don't need the toolbox anymore, so let's get it out of the way. We could customize any of this code, so let's just, to do that, we'll say, test this. Well, by adding something to this method, we're going to have IronSpeed Designer prepare a customized method. And so when we go to Visual Studio, we'll see that in Section 1, here's the customized method, the method that we just changed. Now we've overridden the existing method, and we can use this one instead. Well, we don't really need to override this, but indeed what we do want to do is to go to our, here. We're going to add code to override the button that we have. Remember, we had, first of all, it's going to initialize the page so that the button is either visible or not, depending on whether it has, come on, get over here. Oh, I know what I need to do. Let's go back to different view. Sorry about that. I want to be able to pull the code off the page, and for that I need to be able to edit it. Here we go. Let's take my code, go to our application, and add in our code. What this does is it gets the workflow record, checks to see if there's workflow, and if there's a next workflow step, if there's not a next workflow step, or the workflow isn't ready to go, then it doesn't show the workflow button. Otherwise, it will. It's either visible or not. What's this? Perform. First of all, it checks to see if it's set to do the workflow. We have a perform on date when workflow should be done. And so we check that and don't show it if it's not ready yet, or don't show it if there's no workflow. Next, we'll go back to our application. Now you notice, if you noticed, there was a workflow emails, there was a send email step. Let's go to the, there, come on, where is, here we go. And so we'll want to add, which added the send email on process button. So let's take a look at this code and add that to our overriding code here in Section 1 of our IronSpeed Designer application. And let me show you where that comes in. Here was the process button, the click event, which we customized so that we'd see it here. We don't really want it here. It's going to do it fine. And it sends email. Well, we're going to, this function is defined later in the methods in Section 2, but we're going to add an overriding function in Section 1, which is going to replace this. So let's take this method. We'll just delete the customization since we're not really changing anything in that method. We're going to be adding our overriding function here. We've got this internal code, which we have to get from the next page, but we've got our send email, and now when we're going to send email, this is overriding all of the code which we had later, or which we put in earlier, the false email address and everything else. We're going to be selecting code from the next page. And here is the heart of our email processing. Just take that internal code and put it in here. And with that, we're going to be getting the record that we're looking at, selecting it to select a record based on which account company it's looking at. It gets the first record it finds and then sets up email addresses. Here the email address is from the email record. That's the record in our account company, the workflow record, and also we're going to be getting subject and content. And so we'll be preparing it from the workflow itself. Once we do that, everything is fine. Let's see if we have everything here. First thing we'll do is we're going to we'll rebuild my solution, make sure that everything is indeed compiled and running correctly. Well, we won't know it's running till we run it, but it is compiled correctly. So everything is there. We go back to IronSpeed and reload the pages in IronSpeed since we changed them in Visual Studio. I think we should be ready to go. Let's take a look at what we've got. Where is it? We got this. And next, okay, these are the only steps I have for my workflow. Let's go back to, since we don't need the code anymore, we'll go back to real screens. And let's go back to my application. Let's run it again. You know, I think I probably should have rebuilt it, so I'm just going to check and make sure. Well, we'll try it out. First of all, remember we sent that test message to make sure our email was configured, and lo and behold, here's my test message. This was configuring the email server. So, you know, we will get mail when our server is configured correctly. Where is our application? Again, going to ask us to sign in. So now, when we go to let's take a look at our workflow and see what's happened here. Oh, what I didn't do, look at that. It's labeled My Button, which is easy enough to fix. Forgot about that. When we're configuring the button itself, of course we configured the actions, but in the theme button, we want to change the name so that it is now called Process. Same thing here, configure its tooltip, and it'll be a little more meaningful. I'm not going to go ahead and rebuild it just for that, but you get the idea. So let's see how the rest of it looks. So we've got our button. Suppose we want to process this workflow here. It's now on step 2. Let's see what happens if I click the send button. It goes to step 3, and step 3 is not due for another day or so, and so it, of course, won't show the button anymore, not till tomorrow, but I found out that I've got the step 2 email. So now we've got a configured and working workflow. The mechanics of the workflow are there. There are lots and lots of variations and how you would stage these things and all the rest of that. Our aim wasn't to generate a logically complete workflow, but to show you the mechanics you need in order to get a workflow working for yourself. And with that, the code here, you should be able to do that. So let's take a look at, we don't need to do any other things to the application now. We could, let's talk about some of the tips and tricks for just a minute. I always like to create a single page before going on and creating a group of page. That way you can find out if there are any application generation options you want to create. Maybe you'd want to generate the page differently, have something default, something not default. Very good idea to try that out. Remember, Iron Speed Designer, being such a rapid application development tool, is really ideal for just try it, see what it does. And with that, remember, when you're developing and you're not sure what's going to happen, one of the things you want to do, let's go look at my application. Here's my CRM, in my 11.1. Here's the application I'm building now. Suppose I like it the way it is now. Let's just checkpoint it. So all I do is copy it, paste it. Now I've got a copy I can go back to. Now I can do anything I want to trash this one. If I make a mistake, it doesn't matter. And that's a very important feature because with that you can really just try things out. Remember, Iron Speed Designer is all about taking your steps and seeing what they produce for you. Now, the other thing that I found really useful, we didn't do it this time, but when you're adding child detail tables, remember most of our pages have a tabbed interface where you can see the child tables. Let's look at the account company, see if it, I'm not sure if it, yeah, it has several related child tables. If you want to add a record in here, then what we do in Iron Speed is we'd go to the page that shows the record itself, we drop the table into the page, then we'd add that into this tab group. To add it into the tab group, we remove all the tabs, then add the new table, which we cut and paste, drag and drop from here into here, and then go ahead and add the tab group back in. I know that's a quick explanation, but if you ever tried to do it, you'll understand what I'm talking about. And now let's take a look at our questions. We've got a little bit of time left, and hopefully we can get to the questions that we've got. What if your database naming scheme uses underscore? Should be okay, but for splitting words apart, we really key on the upper lower case. And so I think you'll just get names with underscores. Now you can change some of that, of course, by setting default names, and you can always change the names on individual pages. Let's go look at my application. Of course, you don't have to stick with any label. You can always go to the formula labels and, go to your database editor. You want to use a different label, say for net terms, and you wanted to have something else. In the label text, right now it gives you net terms. Well, if you want to define something else there, you want to take out the space, you want to add an underscore, etc., you can change it there. When naming a table in SQL Server, is it better to use the singular form or the plural form for the table name? John, you've just hit on one of my big quandaries. I'm never quite sure. I try and do what feels best and try and make sure that it's consistent within the application. I don't know that you'll be consistent across applications, but try and be consistent within the application. It will help you and your users. Southwind Database is a full CMR. Southwind Database isn't a full CMR. And there, Roberto, it depends on what you mean by full. But as I said at the beginning, a real CRM is a living, breathing entity. You're always working with it. We have our own internal CRM database called Nexus, and it is huge, and it grows all the time. because we have all these things we use it for. So keep that in mind. Make sure that you're, and this initial one we're giving you is built with that in mind. So go ahead, and if you don't have anything better to start with it. From where to download the CRM, that'll be in the message that comes to you after, right, Jill? After you'll get a message, it'll contain links to our website. There'll be the slides, and there'll be a much larger file, which is a zip file containing the application, a similar one that I built yesterday, just like this one, so it'll have all the code, and the database schema and data for what we're using today. If I use SQL Azure for data, where do I load the IS website pages? I've had different websites use Azure differently. Remember, a web application is really two things. It's your web pages and the back-end database that they refer to. You can have both those on Azure. You can have one of them on Azure and one somewhere else. You can have the web pages at GoDaddy. You can have it the other way around. You can have a web service that I used one at a web service called Arvix, and they had used its database there, the back-end database. It wasn't very efficient, and then I switched to Azure, but I was using that back-end database there with web pages on my own local machine. It's up to you. You can have either one in either place. Azure's gotten much better and really is a nice place to host both web pages and your SQL database. And we give you the opportunity to do that when selecting your database. Write group by page instead of basic. And what will it group by? Peter, the group by table is a basic table page. Now, a basic table page is just a single or grid type page that lays out a record at a time and goes through all of the records in your table. Repetitive entries, one for each record, and you can go through all of them. A group by page allows you to have a tab container below each record containing the child tables that the records refer to, and that's the difference for the group by page. It gives you more connectivity. It's also takes longer to display pages because it's got to do extra database work. So it depends on what you're comfortable with. But for most pages, it really doesn't matter. Your group by pages will display just about as efficiently as your basic table pages. Steve asked the obvious question, why not do that in a database schema? Steve, you're referring to the fact that I didn't have all my foreign keys for the audit fields in the schema. And I didn't do that in this because I really wanted to prepare a diagram without those. And if I add a table, all of a sudden you get all these lines, which I haven't figured out how I can remove without removing them from the database. You'll get all these connections shown. And I only want to show the connections other than the audit field. So I did it just strictly for demonstration purposes so I could do that. You can do either one, and if you don't care about your database diagram, you might want to add the foreign keys. Go ahead and add the foreign keys for all your audit fields. Then you won't have to add them as virtual foreign keys later. Are the virtual foreign keys for demonstration purposes? Yes, I think that's what I just said. Well, virtual foreign keys in this particular instance, virtual foreign key is a very, very handy tool because remember, while you can declare foreign keys in your tables, I don't know how to declare a foreign key in a view in SQL Server. And so when I get into IronSpeed Designer, if I want to use one of my views as part of the page, then I'll want to make sure that I want it to have foreign key links, and it has the fields for foreign key links. I'll make sure it has a virtual foreign key declared so that my views, when used for the page, will also show the foreign key linkage. Does using a virtual foreign key instead of SQL Server diagram links improve performance. Well, the SQL Server diagram links that you were seeing, I think I said, they reflect the foreign key, and you can declare your foreign keys right there in the SQL management tool. They aren't foreign keys are foreign keys. The links that are shown in SQL Server are just the foreign keys. How do you manage database schema changes over time? Very good, Arnold. We have a facility in Iron Speed Designer. Let's go away from our database. Let's go back to our layout editors. In our tools, we have synchronized database schema. And so at any time, if you make a change in your database, you synchronize the database schema. Right now there were no changes, but if I had gone to my database and say added a field or something, then it would go ahead, give you the opportunity to update your data access. Now, we can handle common changes, but really extensive changes you're going to have to watch out for, because there's no way to interpret. When you add a whole new table is easy. We'll just pick it up. Add a field in an existing set of fields, that's fine. We can pick it up. Delete a field, we can handle that. But when you start renaming and rearranging fields, you may want to watch out for that. How to handle or coordinate themes, especially if one has third-party stuff. How to handle or coordinate themes. I see what you mean. Yeah, you're using some third-party control. You're not sure how it looks with the theme you're looking at. Well, I don't know of any easy way to do that. You could, first of all, pick a theme that works with the things you're going to use. Most of the third-party stuff gives you some ability to theme, so you can match colors and things like that, but otherwise it's pretty much an art form. When editing data, is there a way to edit in a table format versus a form view? Yes, definitely there is. We have edit table pages, and so let's just go to my tools and my application wizard, and what you want to do is let's just pick a case table here, and all I'm doing that for is because I want to edit table. Here in the data entry forms is an edit table, and this is an edit table page. This gives us the ability to display just like a basic table, but with editing in text boxes, and so take a look at that. And indeed, if you're not familiar with all the pages Iron Speed Designer has, go to the page types and just click on some of the pages. Get a feel for what each of the page types can do for you. Become familiar with what's available. Where did the workflow steps come from? The workflow steps, we just made them up. Actually, they were made up by our Director of Engineering, Carol, last year, I think. And so we're using that database. I didn't go over it or change anything in it. And they match closely the kind of database or the workflow steps that we use in our own internal workflow or CRM application. How do you handle subroutes for different groups of database modules, subroles for different groups of database employees or actions view only or delete not allowed? Okay, I think you're talking, Arnold, I think you're talking about the security, and when we talk about that, it will depend on lots of things, but you can configure security individually for individual pages. You can configure security for the controls. Let's just let's cancel out of here. Look at our security. When we go to our Tools Security Wizard, our security's already been built for this application, but we can go back through, and in particular, we can notice everything is the way it was. We can look at our pages and add new pages. See, we've got here, we can change things. We can use role-based security and change a group of table pages here to a different role-based security. When we have role-based security, you'll be able to select roles down here, and that will give you lots of flexibility. You can also select from the property sheet on the individual page just security for particular controls. Can you prohibit the menu from showing up on the login page? The whole menu, I think I tried that once. Usually, I think you can do that if you just make sure that each one of the individual items in it is configured. Let's cancel this. If we go to our menu, configure the menu, then if we, let's just, here we have add employees, and if we make sure that the role is signed in users for that, so you won't be able to see, well, I don't think that's the right one, because, yes it is, that's fine, let's try that, see if I get myself in trouble. Now we're going to run the application again. Now remember, our employees menu has been configured to only be shown if you're logged in. And of course, we won't be logged in right away, but of course, we'll have the login screen. And now here we are. We have our sign-in screen. Notice no employee menu. So all you got to do is configure it in the menu items, and you can do that. Okay, let's kill this one. Can you prohibit the menu? Will the deck include C#? No, it won't include C#. Unfortunately, we didn't want. But there's an interesting observation for you. The only code that's been used to customize the example we're sending you is the VB code you see in the slides. So you can go do the same thing. Take that code, run it through one of the many online VB to C# translators, then paste in your own customization after you've converted your application to C#. And there you go. Is it possible to send emails with attachments through IronSpeed? You can, yes, you can add attachments, and you'll do that in the code. It's another step for the email. You can add attachments to your email, so check the base classes, definitions. It allows you to add attachments. That's actually the send email code for .NET. Okay, is there a way to include attachments from the database? That would be more difficult because it has to be available. Haven't looked at how to do that. You'll have to put the attachment somewhere so that you could include it in your email. Email server SMTP support for SSL or TLS or auto. That's a good question. Well, your SMTP support includes your SMTP server and what you're using, and so that's not really a function of IronSpeed Designer. Can you demo how to copy-paste child tables? The last thing in your presentation. Hassan, that's going to be a topic for another webinar where it's a little more complicated. I tried to give you a feel for exactly how it went, but doing it is going to use up more time since we're already 5 minutes over the time for the webinar. There's only so many things we can accomplish. Does the form work on mobile or is it enormous? Does it fit the device? Does this form? These pages, if you view, let's try and view some of the, let's go look at a report form. Let's look at our employees. Where is our employees? Here we go, our employees. Here's our show employee. No, sorry, wrong one. I didn't want to look at it because that one's secured and it won't preview easily. Here we show account company, group by account. Let's preview the group. This is the regular web. I don't want to disable security. So we just want to look at the account page. And here it is. Here's the page. It's big, right? How's it going to look in a mobile? Let's see how it looks in mobile. Here's the mobile table page right here. and it gives us this. We can drill into the records. It makes it so that you can see the essence of what you're doing, but you can also get the information. You can get to the individual records. And so really, for your own data and everything, the best thing to do is experiment with your mobile pages and see how they come out. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. Where can I find a how-to to do the tab group stuff you talked about last? That's a good question, boy. If several people ask about the same thing, how can you find that? Not sure that we have any online documentation that I'm aware of that specifically lays out those steps. And for that, then the best thing to do would be to, if you have support, ask, and you have a specific need for putting in the table, ask in support and we can answer the question. Can I review this webcast? We don't record we are recording. So Jill says there will be a webcast or a video you can see, and so it'll be on the internet. Okay, I don't know if you heard that, but Jill says it'll be posted by Friday unless we encounter any unforeseen consequences. But I don't think we will, so look for it after this weekend. Can I use a different email HTML template for different kinds of messages? You can use all the email templates you want, and you can use pages, you can use HTML, and the more you use, remember you're preparing, if you saw, in overriding the set email content, we're preparing our own email content. You can put all the program you want in there to do that. So, what database options are available? Database options. Dawson, I'm not sure what you mean. Options is a very big term. What database? Oh, what databases can we use? We can use SQL Server. We can use, of course, we can use Access. Access is great for prototypes. And we can use SQL Server CE, the compact edition. We can use also MySQL and Oracle. Wayne Hussey says there is a video. Thank you, Wayne. There is a video on the code tabs. Excellent. Thank you, Wayne. That's so the people who asked about how to put things into your tabs and your pages, go look on the video page for the video about code tabs and see if you get a demonstration there. Thanks, Wayne. What database options are available? To cover that, what database options are available? Do IronSpeed designers support multi-tenant applications? Yes, and actually this was designed with that in mind. It has companies. If I want to make sure that everybody who comes in only sees records for their company, then I have to have that company. This is account company, shows my account company, and then I have to have an account company field in every record that I want to exclude. And once you do that, you can use your logged in user account company to filter every set of records that they see. The IronSpeed recognized SQL Server calculated fields. Calculated fields, meaning, that's a good question. If calculated fields are what I think they are, I don't use them usually, but they are fields in your database where the value that's shown in the field is actually calculated for each record. And yes, you can use them in your application. When I finish my app, how user and add or modify roles. Need to install IronSpeed. Sorry, but no, I have no audio. He doesn't. I finish how add or modify user roles. if we have role-based security, actually use the Southwind. Take a look at the Southwind database, which has its own role-based security tables that go along with the sales rep table. You can see how the sales rep roles and the role-based security works. Experiment with it, and I think you'll get a good feel for the role-based security. And that's what you're talking about, I assume. Can I get field default values from another table? Field default values from another table? Yes, you can. You can, let's see. I believe you could. Don't know if I'm going to be able to do it, but I'll give you something to try. Let's take a look at our application. In our application, what happened here? My app. Okay. Look at my editor. Let's just look at a Show Employees page, for instance. Suppose I wanted the field name to, first name to come from somewhere else. Then I'd put in a new formula here, and I could get this database record, but I can get functions, I can get database functions, and I can go get column values from any place else and use them here in a formula to initialize things. And so I think I can do what you want that way. I'd experiment with it. With the files available for download, will the files available for download work in the trial version of IronSpeed Designer? They will work, but you're stuck with the limitations. They won't have any special capabilities like the sample databases do. You can use the sample databases unrestricted, but the database we're giving you here is just another database, and so it doesn't have any special capabilities in the trial version of Designer. Can I use C# in IronSpeed Designer? You certainly can. If you heard my earlier question where I said, basically you take this application, you put it in the application wizard, you do nothing else except change it from VB to C#. It'll give you new C# code. The customizations won't be there, so take the customizations from the slides, run them through a C# translator. Many are available on the internet, not very much code there, and then put them in yourself, and you'll have the same application in C#. What I understand from the screen is that it handles a single record, how to handle complex scenarios, single record, in case we need to add multiple records to a table in a single transaction. When you're talking about having multi-record, then you're talking about really customized. If you want to have a transaction cover more than one record, you can do that, and you should have seen that we did save a new record in the code that I gave you for doing the email record. We updated the current record. We didn't update a multiple record, but we could just as easily put inside that transaction code the code to do as many different tables or records as we wanted. You have to manage all that. Unfortunately, IronSpeed Designer isn't built on that paradigm, so you'll have to manage that yourself, but you certainly can do it. Remember, IronSpeed Designer is a standard .NET web application. You can do anything you want to, anything you need to that you can do in .NET. With Microsoft opening ASP to open source in Linux, will ISD plan to deploy apps on Apache? We have no plans that I'm aware of, and I'm not sure that just because IronSpeed made it open source that they will go in that direction, but we'll see. When I finish my app, how user end add or modify roles, end user, you need user end install. I don't think I understood that question. Modifying the user roles is something you would do with pages you put for those tables. Remember, your user roles are in tables, and so you have access to those. You can create pages, and you can create a whole section of your website with tighter security for updating roles. So that's how we do that. I don't have an example of that. That's why I suggested you try actually using the Southwind database to experiment with role-based security. Do we get an email with link to data? Yes, you will get an email with link to everything. Thank you for sticking around. We're way over, but that's okay. We still have more questions. I'm going to answer all these questions as long as it doesn't go past 3 o'clock this afternoon. Very different issue. Can you explain about filtering data by logged in user? I'd like to make business-to-business website which can only, certain users can see only their assigned items. Like to get an idea. Yeah, Mike. What you do is you have, here we have account company. Well, every user has a user ID. And we could definitely filter. Let's go to here. Let's look at show employees. Okay. Here's the group by table for employees. So in the group by table, every page is backed by a data source, maybe more if there are filters and other things that use different data sources. Let's see. Here's the table control query. This is the employee table control. This is where it gets the data for what it shows you in the employees. There's other filters, other queries here that get the data that shows in the child tables. We'll ignore those for now because we're just going to look at the data you're seeing for the employees. So the employees, let's add a where clause to it. Employees, what field? Employees. Do we have a link? No. So what we need here, and there isn't one for employees, I think we're looking at the wrong one. Cancel. Cancel. I want to go to customers. So if I'm looking at customers and I show a customer, show customer table, okay? Table mobile, sorry, group by customer. Here's a customer table. We can look at the data sources that show the customer data. And here's the customer table control of the query. This is where it gets its data from. We go to edit that. We can add a where clause. And in particular, we want to make sure that my account company, that I belong to a certain company. And so we want to make sure the account company ID here is the same as is equal to, not operators, functions, in the database, not the database, in security, user ID. Let me see. What we want is that the user ID here, so we want to have in the, we want to look up the company for the user ID. And when we look up the company for the user ID, we match it to the company in the record, and then only that company's records will be shown to this user ID, and that's what you want to do. So that's a quick example of how to do what I think you're asking about. ISD application CSS files can be customized 95%. Can you tell us what the other 5% that we cannot customize? Oh, I wonder where, Hassan, I don't know where you got that from. ISD application CSS files, you can customize anything you want. You can wreck your application too. We don't keep you from doing that. So you have to, and I'd be very surprised if you'd want to customize with 95%. I'd say there's about 5% you probably want to customize. But what Hassan is talking about is in our application, we have business layer. What are we looking at here? We're looking at my application explorer. Okay. Why presentation layer? My themes in my Cabernet theme. Here are my styles. And we can take any of these styles, paste them into base styles, and change the values, and you can do that to anything in here. There isn't any 5% limitation that I know of. You can do anything you want. Just watch out for what you do. What I was asking is, are the steps in the database tables or predefined in the steps? Yes, yeah, Clint. Yeah, Clint, your previous question is lost on me. I'm trying to recall steps in the database tables or predefined in code, workflow steps. No, they're not. The steps are in the database tables. It depends on how you define the database tables, but then, of course, how you use that information is embodied in the code that I overrode those functions with. So if you look at the code, you can put anything in there. So you have data in the database, but how you interpret that database is strictly open to the interpretation that you place on it in the code you write. Can we hide menu when signing in after login or menus show up? Can we hide a, you can set security. You saw how I set the security for a menu item. You can do that with any of your menus, and then it will act appropriately. You can show menus only for signed-in users. You can show them only for if you aren't signed in. That's either way. Just a note, when you configured your email server, there was an option for SSL. Okay, Troy, then if there was an option for SSL, then you can use that, in which case I haven't used that, so I don't know exactly how it'll work out, but I think you'll try it. Sounds to me like you'll try it out and see how it works. Postgres SQL is not supported, sorry. Many table names are cryptic. Yes, that's an unfortunate thing that happens in database, in which case you'll have to go through and rename. You'll want to go through and rename some things in your application. Do the best you can. And yes, that's right. Can you use ASP.NET membership database to control roles? ASP.NET membership database. I am thinking that you may be able to use it, but it require a lot of customization. And I know that we don't routinely look at that ASP.NET feature, and so I really don't know. I'm sure because it's a customizable application, you can do anything you want. I have great faith in that. So I know we could use something, and it may be a lot of trouble, and it may not be worth the effort. Access level with roles, down to the control level. And can it global, not just one page, access level with roles? Controlling your access level with roles down to the control level. Can it be global, not just one page? You know what I forgot to do in this? Oh, isn't that interesting? One thing I didn't show you, and I should, just because it was very important for here's my application. And I'm looking at, I don't want to look at this, just look at a page. When I'm developing my application, that's all right, let's see. Not here. Once I develop my application, now I want to make sure that all of the auditing fields, the created by, updated by, get updated normally when they're used. And so let's put some global initialization on this. And so I think this is what you're talking about. And if I use the batch wizard in my application particularly, I wanted to initialize certain fields, that is the created by, updated upon, etc. I want to make sure that they're initialized the same way in all the places they're used. And so I just check these. This is a particular example that we have here. You can add another entry, which would be any field, any action, etc. The global batch wizard here applies global initialization or changes to your whole application. Once I do that, then those fields will be initialized in every place they occur in that way, which is very handy for audit fields, which is why we started to have this facility in the first place. And let me see, we're getting down near the end. With my cryptic table names in my app, is there a facility to replace all or find next replace? I don't know of anybody who's been able to do that successfully. You know, that's a kind of feature I'd ask on the forum about. There may be somebody who's actually dealt with this real-world problem and can give you some heads up on what they had to do. And so remember, we have a great group of users, and the forum is active all the time, so don't be afraid to ask for questions like that on the forum and see if anybody else has had the same problem. How do I customize the UI instead of wizard output? You can customize the UI. There's lots of ways. That's not part of this webinar. And so come to our crash course. I'll show you on Friday. I'll show you how to customize do some of the customization for your UI. How to join two databases. You can put two databases together. You can't join them, but you can put them in the same application. And that amounts to simply going to the application wizard, going back to my databases step, and adding a database. Suppose I have another day. Now, you want to make sure that you really would like not to have the same names and stuff in them, because you're going to get awfully confused. But you can definitely go and add in other databases, and then those databases will be available for pages. You can put them all in the same application. Okay? And with that, I think that's a good place to wrap it up for today. I want to thank you for coming. And, whoa, I don't even have a termination slide. Look at that. I'm going to have to fix that. Well, thank you for coming. And remember, otherwise, come to our crash course every Friday for some of the basic items that you ask questions about.